In the age of YouTube, everybody wants to be a filmmaker. Sometimes it can be a little bit confusing about how to start, what makes a good video, and how to edit once you have all of this footage. My name's Amanda Zitto. I'm from Montana. I live in Portland, Oregon, and I film motorcycle content. I have 6 bikes. Today we're going to talk about how I film my videos. Coach Ron left this comment on my last video about how I quit my job to live on the road after I asked him if him and his wife are going to record their trip that they plan to take in 2020. He said, yes, I do plan on vlogging. It'll be my first official vlog. We have the bikes, camping gear. What we don't have is all the video and camera gear for vlogging other than Cena 20 communicators. So I'm hoping you'll do a video on your camera video gear, how-to, editing, which you're great at. Thank you. And what it all takes to make such videos with voice and music overlays. Thank you, Coach Ron, for leaving me that comment. So here's kind of a general what I use and how I make my videos. But first, it's blanket time because it is cold in the garage, you guys. I have the heater going, and I'm sorry if you're wearing headphones and you can hear the humming, but I will start this with like a preface that I am not a professional filmmaker. I did not go to school for this. I did go to art school, but I don't have any training about how to actually handle a camera. Everything that I know is pretty much from trial and error and watching tutorials on YouTube from people like Peter McKinnon or Maddie Hapoya. So take everything that I say with a grain of salt. Everything has something that works specifically for them. So just because this works for me doesn't mean that it'll work for you or that you have to do it this way. I think I take a little bit of a different approach to vlogging than most people expect from a motovlogger. I don't have a GoPro with a mic hooked up into my helmet, but there are plenty of other examples of this setup on YouTube if that is what you want to do. Tim from 40 Times Around just put up a really good example of a motovlogging setup with GoPro versus knockoff cameras, which I highly encourage you to go check out. This kind of GoPro on the helmet and seeing the world from the perspective of the rider, it seems to be the most popular setup for motovloggers, and if they're really fancy, they also have one on the handlebars looking back at them that they'll jump back and forth between. I personally choose not to make content like this because when I watch content like this, I'm often distracted by the engine noise, wind noise going by the helmet, and I can't hear what they're saying. The sense of depth that we feel while we're going down the road is totally flattened when filmed through an action camera. So the only thing that's properly keeping my attention to that video is the topic of discussion that that writer is talking about. And if they're not clear and concise and to the point, I click off. I am a very visual person and I'm a very impatient consumer. I want the information that's promised to me in the title of the video as quickly as possible. I want everything to be really well organized and I want to see pretty things. So I try to keep all these things in mind when I'm making videos for myself because first and foremost, I make my videos for myself and then the needs of my audience. I like to compare myself a little bit more to people like Nora or Alex Chacon, I'm sorry if I said your last name wrong, or even how Adventure Spec makes the Races to Places videos. Not that I'm anywhere near the quality of their content, but that's just what I like to strive for. So I will start with structure, which is very similar to a story arc, and it's something that you need to be keeping in mind even before you leave for your trip. An introduction to what your viewers can expect from the video, kind of an introduction of who you are, and then the meat of the video, which if you're making a how-to video, is all of the little sections that you're gonna be talking about, or if you're on a trip, some kind of highlighted event or topic, and then a conclusion, which isn't that different from the narrative story arc that we're all taught in high school, which is the introduction to characters, foreshadowing of events to come, rising action, climax, falling action, and then resolution. If you're going to be creating a series, you should be thinking about the story arc kind of overlaying the whole series, but you also need to make sure that you have an introduction or a reintroduction, some kind of rising and falling action in every single episode. When you're recording a longer trip, it becomes a little bit harder to keep these story arc things in mind, but most of it will come out naturally in editing depending on how much you recorded and how much you wrote down. Everything that you don't capture in the moment are things that you're going to have to try to explain later to fill in the gaps. One of the golden rules of filmmaking is show, don't tell. I take this as a very strong suggestion. It is really important to have relevant visuals for your audience to look at, but you also have to remember that they are not mind readers. So you need to remember to take them along as it's happening and explain what's happening and why. That brings us nicely into what equipment I use to make my vlogs. Cameras! Way back before I even started this channel, I shot on a Canon PowerShot ELPH. It had 18 megapixels, and if you don't know a whole lot about lenses or shutter speed or any of that stuff, it's a really good intro level camera. While I was planning the pilgrimage, I knew that I needed to upgrade my camera before I left. I wanted a camera that I could switch lenses on. I wanted a flip up screen so I could look at myself while I was talking to it. And I knew that I wanted a mirrorless camera that was compact but also had Wi-Fi capabilities so I could see what my camera sees on my phone. So thanks to my amazing grandmother, I shot everything that you saw on the pilgrimage except for my helmet cam footage on my trusty Sony Alpha 5100. Then that brings us to my current camera, the one that I'm shooting on today, which is the A7R II. After the very unfortunate accident that happened to my Alpha 5100, I was able to buy this camera from the Doctor and The Dropout. The link to their channel is down below. And I'm super excited to learn more about this new tool. It's definitely a step up. There are a lot more things that I need to learn. I don't have a flip-up screen anymore, so I can't look at myself while I'm holding the camera like this. But I still can look at myself on the remote app on my phone, and also it has an audio in, which means I can plug in a shotgun mic, which means my outside audio should be a little bit better. Moving on to tripods. I have 3 tripods that I generally use. One that the camera is sitting on right now, which is my Polaroid 72-inch tripod with a quick release plate, so I can just take my camera off and put it back onto the tripod. This is the one that if I had the option to, I would take everywhere with me because it's beefy, it goes up really high so I can talk to the camera while I'm standing, and also it doesn't just knock over when there's wind. I also have a 52-inch more portable tripod, but it's also a lot less stable. It doesn't have the nice clips on the legs that other tripods do. It's one of those ones where you pull the leg out and you twist it so that it doesn't go back in. Not the best, but it's also the most portable. My third tripod is kind of the cheapy knockoff of my Polaroid tripod, and it normally just stays in my garage to hold up my lighting equipment, to be honest. Tripods are vital for selfies with the bike, and also just to get footage of yourself when there isn't somebody else around to hold the camera for you. I will also say that I have a Zhiyun Crane M3 gimbal, which I use like half of the time, but it gets really nice, smooth B-roll. I also have a DJI Phantom Pro 3, which is awesome, but sucks butt to take on the bike because it's so big. I definitely think that drones are not necessary to document your adventures. If you do choose to get a drone, please be respectful. Read up on the laws. In the US, you are not allowed to fly a drone in national parks or in state parks. You can't fly near any large mass of people or in town without a commercial permit. And please use an app like Air Map that will tell you if you're in a no-fly zone or if you're near any airports that need to be notified that you're flying a drone. Moving on to helmet cameras. GoPro seems to be the industry standard for motovloggers. I am personally not a fan, partially because the usability while riding kind of sucks, and also because of the price point. I would rather spend that kind of money on a handheld camera because it's going to affect my vlogs and my photos. So instead of forking over for a GoPro, a couple years ago I bought a Contour Roam 2. The company went out of business a couple years ago, but you can still find them on the internet all over the place. They're a little bit more expensive now than when I purchased mine, but having used it for 3 years now, the ease of use I think is worth the price. The Sena Prism Tube has a really similar design to the Contours, and then Sena also makes a couple other cameras like the Prism and then the 10C and the 10C Pro. You also have the wide world of GoPro knockoffs at your disposal. I personally tried the Akaso 4K, and that's what I took to Baja with me. So all the helmet cam footage that I took in Baja was taken on the Akaso, if you would like to check that out. The footage is totally usable. My issue with it is the same as I have with the GoPro, is that in order for me to know that the camera is on and recording, I have to stop, turn it on, make sure that it's recording, get going, and then stop to turn it off again. If you do choose to go the GoPro route, I really encourage you to get a SoPro mount, which is this like removable mount for the GoPros and GoPro knockoffs that mounts to the front of your helmet, and it's not permanent, which means you can transfer it from helmet to helmet. Moving on to sound. Sound has been a learning process for me. There are a lot of things that your audience will forgive. Bad sound is not really one of them. Some cameras have pretty okay internal audio, but if you're standing any kind of distance away from the camera, you need an external mic. When I'm doing talking head videos like this one, I have a lav mic that is attached to a recorder that I then sync up to the footage in Premiere while I'm editing. I have the Olympus digital recorder and a Sony omnidirectional lav mic. For cameras that give you a mic in option so that you can use an external microphone, Rode is kind of the industry standard. I just purchased one recently for the A7R II, specifically to cover up the autofocus noises that my lens makes, which the internal mic on the camera picks up really bad. That mic will mainly be used for when I'm walking around with the camera in my hand and I'm not in my garage. I won't go over in-helmet mic options because that's not personally what I do, but I will tell you that I have experimented with the Cena 10S. I use the Bluetooth recorder app to record the audio from that mic directly to my phone and then export it to my computer later. You can absolutely get on Amazon and buy a nice lighting kit with softboxes. I did not do that. It is a little bit expensive. I do have two cheap newer 160 LED dimmable lights that I use to set up on tripods and use trash bags as softboxes. They're pretty cheap on Amazon and the batteries last a pretty long time. After I broke my wrist, setting up those tripods and lights kind of became too much of a pain to be worth it. So I bought some dimmable LED strips and just started stringing those up, and I've been really impressed with the results. Another alternative to softboxes that you can get is the IKEA paper lampshades. They're super cheap. I think they're under $10. And if you get those strips of LEDs, you can just stuff those inside and it makes a really nice soft light. The things to remember about the basics of 3-point lighting is that you want a key light, a fill light, and a backlight. A key light is the thing that you have to have no matter what. If you're shooting outside, the sun is your key light. If you're inside, you want the key light to be about a 45-degree angle to the right or left of your face. You want the fill light to also be to the 45-degree of the other side of your face, and you want that one to be a little bit dimmer than your key light. The backlight is aimed at your back, and that's also going to be at a 45-degree angle to you. So it could either be over here or over here. And the point of the backlight is to separate you from the background. Now I know that sounds a little bit complicated, but you don't always have to have 3 physical lights to make this equation happen. You can use a window as your key light. You can use a reflector as your fill light, which will bounce the light from your key light back to the other side of your face. Or you can be like me and cheat and use a strip of LEDs as your key and your fill light. And if I'm doing really good that day and I'm shooting in the daylight, then I use the windows in my garage as my backlight. Try to consider the lighting in your environment. The absolutely best time to shoot is golden hour, in the morning or in the evening when the sun is setting. During the middle of the day, try to find a shaded area to film in so that you don't have a bunch of harsh shadows on your face. Music. Please do your audience a favor and use something other than the generic ukulele track or any of the 8 songs that all of us know show up when you Google royalty-free music download. I personally use Epidemic Sound. It's about $15 a month for YouTube creators, and you have a lot of options, including sound effects, as well as background music and that kind of stuff. I will also say that I try to keep my background music in the background by adjusting the levels so that my voice isn't drowned out by any kind of background music that I'm trying to use. I try to use different music for all my videos now and make sure that it kind of matches the mood of the video. I try to keep in mind that when I edit my B-roll sequences, I try to keep the cuts in time to the beat of the music. Editing. I edit in Premiere Pro. It's about $20 a month with the Creative Cloud. The other option that's pretty comparable to Premiere is DaVinci Resolve, which is free for the standard version, and I've heard a lot of good things about it. I organize all my footage by what day it was shot and then what camera it came from. I keep the audio for my Olympus in a different folder, and then also I make folders specifically for the titles and images that I'm going to use in the video. I think the most important thing that I can tell you about my editing process is that I cut out as much dead space as I possibly can. I will cut all the bits from all of my clips that I want to use, and I'll slowly put them all into my timeline in chronological order. Then once I'm done cutting out all of those pauses, I'll go back and watch it again and make sure that my point is clear. Once I've edited all the bits of me talking, that's when I'll go back and cut down all of my B-roll segments and cut them specifically to the music that I've chosen for the video. So then I will go back and I will watch the video like 4 or 5 times, just cutting little bits here and there until the video feels kind of smooth. I will kind of go through and do a rough color correction. I will put an adjustment layer over the whole video and insert a LUT, which is kind of like a preset or a Instagram filter for videos. Color correction is kind of sprinkles on top of a cake. They are not totally necessary. The whole pilgrimage was shot and edited with no color corrections whatsoever. So if you're shooting things like in log profiles, color correction is absolutely necessary, but if you're just shooting in normal like MP4 modes on your camera, it's not necessary. I will then take one of the photos that I took on my trip and take it into Photoshop and make my thumbnail. My main tip for thumbnails, which is something that I seem to always forget, is that they put how long the video is always in the bottom right-hand corner of the thumbnail when it's on your video library page or when it shows up in a subscription feed. So if you put any text down here, it will be completely obscured by the timestamp. So last but not least, when I upload to YouTube, I try to make sure that all relevant links and information is in my description and it relates to the tags that I'm using for that specific video. Like if I mentioned any channels or if I wrote an article that is very similar to the video that I'm making, I will link to that article in the description because I will often go into more detail in that article than I did in the video because I'm trying to keep this short. I hope that answered some questions. My last tip for you is don't be too discouraged when you make mistakes or when you upload your videos and you watch it back and it's really shaky. There is definitely a learning curve to this kind of thing, and it's better to make things and put them out in the world than to not make anything at all. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you have any questions about anything that I talked about, please leave them in the comments down below. If you would like to see a whole list of all of the equipment that I use, that is in the description, as well to links to channels that I talked about in this video, and a link to a blog post that I wrote about this topic that gives a little bit more detail than this video could. And I think that's it, you guys. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you later.